What is Kirby Month? Kirby Month is there to pick you up when you're feeling a little down. Kirby's Month is there to rearrange someone's face when they're acting like a clown. Kirby Month is a hamster, a fish, and an owl. And today is Kirby's Dream Land 2. And if you're not fighting on my side, well man, I pity you. Before diving any deeper into the video, if you like what you see and you want to help me out, please consider thinking this video is the best by giving it a like, tell me what your thoughts are on Kirby's Dream Land 2 in the comments, and ring the notification bell after subscribing to really help me out. You can find me on Twitch, join my Discord server, or follow either one of my Twitters if you like me that much, but regardless, I appreciate it. Moving on. It's another peaceful day in Dreamland, until it's attacked by an unknown evil entity. Kirby and friends travel through 7 different worlds to stop this menace, and many other familiar faces that are acting violent. Kirby is not alone this time though. With Rick the Hamster, Coo the Owl, and Kind the Fish, you can mix and match with their returning copy abilities for brand new combinations. Can you help Kirby save the day once again? Super Game Boy Border, that's all you need to know. Okay. If Kirby's Adventure expanded the series in a whole new way, Kirby's Dream Land 2 does something far simpler, yet far more in line with Kirby. Despite all of the differences compared to the first game, this is still a direct sequel to Kirby's Dream Land. Instead of feeling completely different, Dream Land 2 actually feels like a proper follow-up. The controls, screen size, and especially the game feel is far closer to Dream Land 1 than Adventure. Aspects such as the copy abilities are borrowed from Adventure. Dream Land 2 was released after Adventure and all, but this isn't just an expanded Kirby, this is an expanded Kirby's Dream Land. Of course, the game being portable unlike Adventure gives it a major advantage. You can play it anywhere you want. And with it being a direct sequel to Dreamland, they obviously expanded the scope of the game too. And by expanded the scope, I mean holy heck, this is an actual full-blown game. 7 worlds, at least 3 levels each, copy abilities, 3 animal buddies, ability combinations with each buddy, mini-games for each boss fight, actual secrets, needed for 100% completion. They added so much to this game while still fitting it all in a tiny Game Boy cartridge. The Animal Friends system works really well too. The friends each have their own strengths, with Rick being good on the ground, Coo in the air, and Kind in the water. Based solely on their designs, anyone can instantly understand which animal friend would be good for what. And if not, that's fine, because the whole early game is about giving you each animal buddy in environments that are good for them, so you can find favorites for yourself. It's a great way to let players learn what the rules of the game are without interrupting the game flow. Of course, once the mid-game hits, things get a bit more intense, but it's still a very gradual rise. I've been talking about Adventure a decent amount already, but as far as the actual level design is concerned, Dream Land 2 differs pretty greatly from it. Adventure loved exciting set pieces and pretty straightforward level design, very rarely shifting away from that. Dream Land 2, while still having closed-off areas, opts for much larger rooms and more meaningful unlockables to find. Despite being on a smaller screen and generally inferior hardware, exploration is the name of the game for Dream Land 2. It goes without saying, but the rainbow drops that you can find in every world only add to this. There's only one in every world, but the middle name of this game, so to speak, is Simplicity. And then I guess the last name would be Best. What made me most impressive about all of this is how pleasant it is to look at. Dream Land 2 definitely pushed some boundaries for the series and how much it could fit in a cartridge, but the fantastic sprite work deserves equal praise. The amount of sprites used for animations is far more than what you see in the previous handheld entry, obviously taking cues from Adventure. But Adventure doesn't have a lot of the assets that this game has, like the animal buddies, making this whole endeavor far more impressive. Moving around levels with all of the animal friends feels great because the animations on screen fit everything perfectly. And the music? A Kirby game with character themes, changing depending on which animal buddy you have? Enough said. All of this is what makes Dream Land 2 the best game in the series. It plays like an improved sequel to Dreamland, borrowing elements from Adventure, while taking the series in a brand new direction and nailing it on the first try, while having all of the limitations a game has by being on the Game Boy. The fact that it exists is impressive, but the fact that it's the best? Actually insane. Right, that early game I was praising before has to have some of the worst level design I've ever seen in a Kirby game. I can't believe that the entirety of World 1 is the way that it is. You can literally just hold forward and get through the first level. This doesn't teach you anything except what one button does. World 2 is so visually similar, I often get the two confused, and World 3, the water world, one of the only areas with a substantial pool of water in the whole game. Maze aren't very good without Kyan. If you have Ku or Rick, so help you. But once you get to World 4, there are not very many chances for Kyan to shine. In general, there's a huge imbalance for the animal buddies. You can't make a game with levels like Dreamland 2 and then make Ku, and only Ku, the way that he is. See, Kyan is good underwater and hard to use on land, in a game with very few water areas, as stated earlier. Rick is good on land, but doesn't have much going for him in the air, and can float, in a game with large, wide open areas and bottomless pits. Ku struggles underwater, but can fly in the air freely, with no restrictions, in a game with as major of a focus on exploration as this. He's not even that hard to use. Even if you like Rick and Kyan, why use them when Ku is right there? To be clear, this is not a speedrunning related problem. My favorite animal buddy has always been Kyan, and I never use him in this game because Ku is just right there. Kyan is clunky, Rick is too limited, Ku is fun to use. But hey, they each have their own theme that plays in the background, no matter what, when you're with them, so you can go to a different buddy if you get tired of hearing Ku's theme over and over. That's not only an awful way to encourage experimentation, it's just bad in execution. If you play Dreamland 2 with any character other than Kirby, there's 3 tracks in the entire game. And if you're just playing as Kirby, you get the regular music, but you don't get an animal buddy. The only reason to actually play this game over all the other ones. An old running gag in the community that's died off kind of, is that Ku's theme is the only theme in the whole game. Further reinforcing my point that, no, this is not a speedrunning issue. This is a Kirby's Dream Land 2 is the worst Kirby game issue. Oh shoot, I digressed pretty hard there. Getting back on track, the early game stinks, but it's not like the mid-game is much better. The levels are actually levels now, which is nice. I shouldn't have to say that, but whatever. But this focus on exploration mostly just involves large, confusing rooms to go through. I'll be generous and blame the screen crunch, but I really don't like seeing a fork in the road, taking the wrong path, and not realizing I took the wrong path until it's far, far too late. And when you don't have to deal with nonsense like this, things go back to being pretty darn boring. It never goes back to how pathetic the early game can get, but best case scenario, this is World 4 of 7. By this point, I am at least expecting a little bit more. The game hits an absolute low point during the very final world, the endgame, Dark Castle. 7 levels, 3 of which are essentially mirrored repeats of 3 other levels, auto-scrollers that can kill you and are pure trial and error, and the whole thing just drags. All of this, mid-game included, is without going into how annoying it is to collect the rainbow drops. Unlike later games, the visual hints that you get to help you know which ability you need to get the drops are horrendous. It's definitely better on the Super Game Boy, but still not nearly enough. If the whole point of this game is to experiment with animal friends and go out of your way to find hidden goodies, but only one animal friend is enjoyable to use, which kills the soundtrack by the way, and the hidden goodies are obnoxiously cryptic, even trial and error sometimes, that does not sound like a fun time to me. If the levels were fun to go through, that'd be one thing, but if they aren't boring, they're tedious here. This is a sequel that had good ideas and for one reason or another implemented everything so poorly that it turned out worse than the prequel. Which prequel? Yes. There you go. That is why Kirby's Dream Land 2 is the worst in the series. As per usual, I had asked my Discord what their thoughts on Kirby's Dream Land 2 were, and honestly, it was not very positive. The general consensus was that the game was fine, and even some people who grew a soft spot for it after multiple playthroughs, but nobody seemed to be a particularly big fan of how the puzzles were handled, the screen crunch, or Dark Castle. There is even somebody who called it the worst mainline game, which is a very spicy opinion, but is it one that I agree with? This script took me a very long time to write. Not because I had conflicting feelings or anything, In fact, coming in, this may have been, with one exception, the one I had the most concrete opinion on. The problem is that this is my least favorite Kirby game that we're covering for this year's Kirby Month. I knew everything I wanted to say for why it was the worst, but despite the praise I've heard from fans of the game, in regards to both casual and speedrunning, I could never get into it. It isn't a bad game by any means, but I really don't like most of the levels here. Moving around in them is, I don't know, fine, I guess, but if the actual levels you move around in aren't some of the blandest in the entire series, they range from fine at best, confusing on average, and painfully trial and error at worst. I've given the game multiple chances, and while I've never found it hard, it is really held back by the hardware. It has some good ideas, most of which are improved upon in later games, but sad to say, this game is not for me. I am in the opinion that, of the ones we're covering this month, this is actually the worst in the series. That Super Game Boy border, though, is pretty amazing, though. I'm not gonna deny that.